Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Taming the Perilous Skies, 100 Days to Launch. Taming the Perilous Skies is a weekly interview series where we take you step by step through a debut author's journey from finished manuscript to cross-platform multimedia launch. My name is Patrick Wimp. I'm a screenwriter, a filmmaker, and a film educator. I'm also a member of the content team at Spoken, and this series is for debut authors. The debut author that brings us all here together today is Dr. Phil Marshall. Phil is the founder of Spoken, which is an audiobook studio and platform for independent authors, and he is also the writer behind Taming the Perilous Skies. For the last 7 weeks, we've been tracking Phil's journey to the launch of his first self-published novel. We started with inspiration. We've talked about genre, the revision process, when is your manuscript ready, the self-publishing industry as a whole. And one of the topics that's kind of lived as a through line through many of those conversations is marketing. And so that's our topic for today. And in order to dive deeper into that topic, we are joined by some experts. We are joined by Joel and Laura Pitney from LaunchMyBook. Joel is a writer and the founder of LaunchMyBook, which is a publishing and promotion agency that helps authors launch their work, launch their books. Thank you so much for joining us, Joel and Laura. We're really happy to have you with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So we're obviously interested in diving into this marketing conversation, but Joel, you're a writer, you're creative people, you guys are entrepreneurs. So can you just tell us a little bit about what drew you to helping other people launch their work?
As life often goes, I kind of fell into this a little bit. I've been a writer for, I don't know, let's see here, almost 20 years now, which is kind of crazy to think. I was writing for a magazine. It was a spiritual magazine, actually. And I was kind of like a journalist, right? So did a lot of long form content. And it was a small magazine, and it was one of those kind of all hands on deck operations. And our editor in chief decided to write a book and publish it. And so at the time, I was the token millennial on the team. And millennials used to be young, and they used to be
right
with this thing called the internet. And so they were like, hey, maybe you could help with all the promotion stuff. And I was like, all right. And so I learned, at that time we had a publisher, we had a traditional publisher, and we had a publicist, from New York, and we had another marketing team on board. And I was like responsible for kind of holding it all together. So I learned all this stuff, and that book succeeded. We did really well on that one. We were hoping to make the New York Times bestseller list. We didn't quite, but we did really well. And so the publisher was like, hey, would you want to help me with other gigs? And at the time I had spun off and I started a little film company. And as you know, Patrick, the filmmaking business is a pretty long lead, and I needed a way to earn some cash in the meantime. So I came on board and I started consulting on some of the book launches for this publisher. And first one, we hit the New York Times list, and all of a sudden there was we gained some traction, and people, they started to hire me, and different people started to hire me to help them. And in the early days, I was very self-taught, self-made, kind of, hey, what do you need? I'll figure it out for you,
Sure.
And so I kind of learned all the things you need to do. And I did that for a few years. I was calling myself a book launch specialist. I might be the only person ever to have that title. And then we were in New York at the time, and Laura, my wife, I'll let her, she was in fundraising, and she was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Let's move out of the city to Oregon, beautiful Oregon, where the cost of living is lower, we thought. And maybe I'll join your business. And so she came on board, and we turned it into a proper company. And at the time, we were really learning self-publishing. So we learned the whole self-publishing process. We brought on a small team, and that was in 2016, and kind of that's what we've been doing ever since.
Great. Laura, what, any insight into kind of that decision and that transition for you?
Well, I'm a Jack Jane of all trades. I don't know if that's what you call us, but I love learning new things. And so I was seeing Joel talk to authors, and every single person he spoke to had some other thing that they needed, and nobody knew what to do. And so it was a constant, sure, I'll do that for you. And sure, I'll do that for you. I'll build you a website. I'll do social media promotion for you. help you figure out who to reach out to sell your book. And I'm in the other room listening and realizing, maybe instead of just for the same fixed amount of money, you don't say yes to every single service. Maybe we start thinking strategically about how to, think about what authors are telling you that they need, and then start offering those things to people. So that's when I got involved, and we started really concentrating on providing website services to authors and social media to authors. And we've done so many different marketing services over the years. I don't even remember anymore. We've tried a lot. Some work and some don't, right? And we've always experimented and just over time evolved and have kind of landed on a few key things that have worked for us.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure that many people are happy to have you. Phil, I think you are currently one of those folks. So, you're our kind of test case, right? Our debut author as we explore all these processes. Can you tell us a little bit about, where your head was at, or how you were thinking about marketing as you embarked on this, debut novel journey?
Yes. Well, sort of. I mean, I'm sort of a self-imposed guinea pig on all of this. And if there, I was very comfortable in the work. I love the story. I love my characters. I knew that visually it would be good. I'd find a good cover designer, and I did. Stellar. And so self-publishing became the the avenue forward. And since then, a lot of times when I used to talk about it, months and months ago, people would kind of admonish me. They're like, stop talking about traditional publishing as what you were really hoping for. Really embrace self-publishing as the way forward for you, because that is a equally legitimate way of being able to get your work into the market, get it noticed. But yet, what was the big abyss between me and potential success? And especially as a debut author, marketing. Like I'm Keanu Reeves jumping between the two buildings and realizing I can't make it, and then plummeting, straight into the concrete. I mean, it's marketing. I have no clue. I don't have a social following. I mean, it's pathetic. 57-year-old man, get some social following, for God's sake. Why aren't you on Instagram more? Why aren't you TikToking? They don't even call it that. I don't know. So marketing became this unknown, at the biggest mystery. And so, yeah, I mean, I was at Writer MBA, and I met Joel, and we started chatting, and I'm like, what you guys do is what I don't know how to do. So we started talking. They have a proposal list, and you're able to check off what are the things that you want. I'm like, everything. I just need everything. And then they came back to me and said, well, actually these few things here are really not for you. I'm like, oh, I need everything. Oh God, I need everything. And so, yeah, it's just all been this big, I don't know. And so we're kind of stepping through it, right? We're heading towards that, that end result of September 12th. And you asked me a very short question. That was a very long answer, but it just falls under marketing for me.
No, it's a lovely answer. And I think it kind of leads into what my next question was going to be, which is, you keep mentioning there were so many things you didn't know, right? And I think, one of the big barometers for knowledge and experience is, learning what we didn't know, right? Knowing the things that we don't know. So for Joel and Laura, that was kind of going to be my question. Those debut authors, the people who, again, are finished their book, or they're close to the finish line, what are some of the things they need to consider? Or maybe, having worked with authors of all shapes and sizes, like, what do people come to you not knowing that they should?
Well, they shouldn't necessarily know anything, right? Their job is to be an author. And
Sure.
Unfortunately, as we like to say to people, and Joel says to people all the time, unfortunately, the author's job now is to also be a marketer.
Sure.
That's just the reality, whether or not you're traditionally or self-published.
Right.
Joel?
And that's especially the case if you don't have an infinite budget, right? Because you're going to have to do a lot of this yourself. And it's interesting. I've worked with authors. I mean, there's so many answers I have for your question, by the way, but I've worked with authors. I've worked with, billionaire authors who have infinite resources to throw at a book, all the way down to people who are bootstrapping, like scraping together $1,000 to put in their marketing budget. Mm-hmm. And The ones who expect that they're just going to be able to hire someone to do it for them never succeed. You have to roll up your sleeves and get skin in the game. And that's fine. It's, you know, I'm a bit of a superstitious guy, kind of. Like, I feel like you have to put energy into things in order to get energy back, in order for things to succeed. You have to, you know, you have to put some of your sweat, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into it. So that's one piece of it. In terms of like, what do people not know when they come? I mean, a lot of what, one of my favorite things to do in this space is to kind of like expose untruths and myths. That's like my favorite thing to do. And I just there are so many myths that people come to me with. And I think a lot of them come from a couple different places. So one of them is traditional publishing, right? So there's things that are true in traditional publishing that just aren't true when you're self-publishing, right? For instance, a pre-order campaign. I think pre-order campaigns are mostly a waste of time. And I know, Phil, you're running one. And I'll give you more details about why. And they're not always. In traditional publishing, pre-orders are really important. Self-publishing, they're not nearly as important. But it's one of these truths that comes, you know, we have this long track record of experts and campaigns in the traditional publishing industry, and that those ideas, that intellectual property gets shifted into self-publishing, and some of these myths carry on, right? So that's one reason you get a lot of things like that. The other one is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to marketing. There just isn't. And what often happens is someone will go out there and succeed with their self-published book. Mm-hmm. And then they'll be like, here's how you do it.
Yeah, that's how you do it, right?
And often, here's how you do it is behind a paywall. By the way, that's usually how that author is making money as an author, is teaching other people how to do what they did. And it's just, there is no one size fits all. So you have to gather your own piece of information. You have to create your own little stack. I call it like the Swiss cheese approach. Each little slice has holes, but when you stack them, they're solid. And you have to try things out. And so like in Phil's case, for instance, if you cringe at TikTok, right? Oh, I can't do TikTok. I don't want to do Instagram, that kind of thing. But you know you need to do something. Well, guess what you came up with? This docuseries, right?
Sure.
That's his personal solution to the need to create content in a way that he could actually do, that he would find engaging, that wasn't cringy to him, right? And I don't know if you're doing TikTok as part of this, but you don't have to get on TikTok and do a funny dance, you know, and that kind of thing, right?
Phil, I think this could be kind of a dual question for everyone. You know, you've now kind of engaged in this process, right? Going from knowing nothing to building out towards launch. So I guess, how has that been for you? And then Joel and Laura, if you want to kind of give an insight into, you know, new author comes on board, you know, what are the questions that you're asking them? What are you guiding them through, you know, to get them in a good place?
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, there's just kind of the categories of things that things fit into that I've had to become more aware of. So there's the mechanical stuff. So get your cover design locked and loaded. Get the format, every format of the book ready to go. Then there's like, okay, do you have a newsletter distribution list? No. I mean, Spoken does, and we're doing co-promotion, and so I'm going to be able to leverage that. So that'll be fine. And so that's one of those things that LaunchMyBook sort of brings to the table. And other folks like Written Word Media, Book Bub, is that right?
Yep.
Bub, yeah. And so folks like that kind of bring to the table, which is something to leverage for distribution, to get in front of those readers who are very likely to like what you do. And so I've also done my own research on what are the genres. So hard sci-fi adventure, did a lot of research on Amazon, did a lot of ChatGPT deep research on all of this. We've covered it in prior episodes of this docuseries. And then beyond just mechanically getting it on Ingram Spark, ready to go, getting it on Amazon, getting all of the mechanical pieces in place. What's the actual, you know, okay, there's the newsletter outreach. Are there any systematic things? Of course, you know, you read about things all the time. You read about, like, oh, well, you've got to do your Facebook ads, or, all the ad stuff. And I'm like, I just it just seems like some of this stuff is just going into the abyss. You're not really getting in front of that likely reader. And so, you know, and then how do you game the system? I don't know, actually. I don't know.
You know, early on in this business, Phil, I started realizing that I had to think about, like, what do readers, how do I get my books, right? Sure, I get some of them because I might see an ad on Amazon, right? Maybe. But my whole life, mind you, I'm in my 50s, right? So I was like pre-internet kid. But how do I still find out about books? It's because somebody read a book and they loved it and they told me about it. And so I think that there's something about our work as marketers and as authors who are marketing our work that we have to remember the essence of readers love to read. That is what you're trying to do, is you're trying to reach into the heart of readers, and you're hoping that they're going to advocate for you and they're going to give your book to their best friend and to their sister and their brother. And so, you know, having access to email lists and all of that kind of stuff is how you kind of, which is the kind of stuff that we do, you know, is to sort of be able to reach people who are going to do those things.
Sure.
But I feel like we have to always remember at the base of it how people are and what reading is really all about.
I agree.
Yeah, very well said.
There's this funny thing that happens that I've noticed with people. I've noticed this in a lot of industries because I've done marketing in different industries and but it's like when it's time to market something, people put on this thing they think is a marketing hat. They're like, okay, I'm going to market now. And then and there's all these best practices that they think that they're supposed to do. Like, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. And then, but if they were to take off that marketing hat and then look at those strategies as just a normal human, they would never do them. They'd be like, no, that's not going to work on me. Right. And so there's this funny thing that you have and it often happens with books because it's a foreign industry. People are like you, Phil, you kind of stumble into it and it just seems like this black hole of confusion and what do I do? Right. And so you think that there's some magic formula out there. Right. But I think that people, especially people who are engaged and may have some experience doing some kind of marketing or growth in another industry, I think your instincts are important as a reader and as just a human being, and you shouldn't overlook those.
No, I love that. Right, that self-reflection, that self-knowledge can answer so many questions, and you're right. I do think it is very frequently overlooked.
You know, one of our biggest. I'm sorry, I'm just going to give you an example. One of our biggest success story. You know, we didn't actually work with her because by the time I met her, she was already this runaway success. But I met her at a conference, just like I met Phil at a conference. Her name is Crystalline Sanders Diggs, I think is her name. And she was working in tech. She lives in the Bay Area, working in tech, successful career, everything's good. And then someone in her family experienced some kind of, I think that there was some encounter with like some child in her family experienced some kind of sexual abuse, right?
Oh, wow.
And she just had this inspiration one day to help to work with that child and write a book about it. And she just followed her instinct. She was just like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then she started doing things on TikTok and Instagram about it. And she wasn't doing anything. There were no best practices. She didn't take a marketing course. She didn't buy a book. She just started telling a story and just being human and going with everything. And it took off. And now she's quit her day job. And she now just self-publishes children's books, and she crushes it. And everything was built from her own instincts. And she, of course, she learned best practices along the way, but it all started with her going with a real story and wanting to fill a real need for her readers.
It sounds very genuine and authentic, right? Which has become an overused word in a lot of these spaces. But like you're saying, it was truly just something happened and she felt compelled and inspired to do that and follow that. And people respond to those things.
One of the things that I'm curious about, I've never really talked with Joel about this. And that is that, you want to find some communities that would enjoy your work. Well, of course, the key target there is your genre reader, right? I mean, the hard sci-fi reader, you want to get in front of them, and that's your normal, I guess, what Amazon, promotional stuff, I guess. if there's a topic that you're covering, and your mention of the children's story and the sexual abuse is what brought this to mind. You know, with my work, I came to this after creating a theory in gravitational physics, as one does, and and so there's the physics and the science angle, but then there's also these little niche, you know, things all through the book. You know, whether it's Hindu culture. The drum and bugle corps activity plays a role. It's actually what lent the name to the novel. The 1992 show called Taming the Perilous Skies by the Cadets. Actually, it's David Holsinger's work called To Tame the Perilous Skies, but I didn't like that as much, so I changed the name for my novel. And so the drum and bugle corps group, and I actually know people who marched that 1992 show that got the silver medal in Madison, Wisconsin at Camp Randall Stadium. I was there personally to see this, but I know people who marched that show. And so little communities like that just happen to be niche. Of course, the problem there is that, you know, they're not necessarily sci-fi readers, but my book, I hope that I've watered get that part down enough to where it's not off-putting to the regular, you know, sort of mainstream reader. But I'm wondering what, Joel, you and Laura think about just identifying that litany of little niche audiences that might find something about your story particularly unique or speaking to them.
Laura, do you want to say, do you have some things?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just say that this is where I feel like the point earlier about, you know, getting your advocates on board, right? And Joel's point earlier about hustling, that you get these ideas of like, oh, I bet somebody who was there or somebody who was part of that maybe they would like this. And how do you reach into them? It's not by finding them tagged, you know, on Facebook, right? It's by, do you know somebody who knows somebody who you can write a special personal note to and give it to the, you know? And I think that that's where this whole thing about instinct and creativity comes into play. And I think personal interest is one of the best ways you can get somebody to read a book. They have some personal connection to it. I think that's a really great idea. I love it.
When I think about these things, it's like, I always think about a book as like an outreach campaign. That's how I think about it. And you just imagine that you have this network and there's an existing network, but then what you're really trying to do is grow a real network for yourself. And that's got to be real, right? So if you want to go out there, you know, you can go by genre or you can go by topic, right? And usually topic is nonfiction, more than it is genre, more than it is with fiction, but you can still have topics in your fiction. And you just want to go out there and find all the places, Google stuff, look for Facebook interest groups, look for little subgroups on Reddit, right? Find all the places that people are really hanging out and actually get involved, you know, get in there, actually talk about, you know, don't just go in there and pretend you're interested in what they're interested in so that you can talk about your book. If you're a hard sci-fi author and you love hard sci-fi, get in there and like start to get engaged with that audience and figure that out. And then those connections start to grow organically out of that.
Bottom line, get in there and do it, right? Get in there and do your outreach campaigns.
Right. And this is one thing I feel like it's funny. I'm going to bring up Crystal in again, the children's book author, because we sat on a panel together at the San Francisco Writers Conference. And she said this thing that I totally am aligned with. And it's busting one of the myths. I call it the, if you publish it, they will come myth. And there's a lot of people out there who say, if you just get the right algorithms, you know, just get just the right keywords, just the right micro niche, just the right, that somehow you're going to get like crazy discoverability. And the truth is that, you know, put effort into those things, you know, use Rocket Reach or whatever you can do all those things, get keywords, do all that kind of stuff. That's great. All of it. Awesome. Optimize the target. Great. But you have to earn discoverability. You can't hack it, right? Search engines on Google or for books on Amazon, they make their money on getting people exactly what they want. And you can't fool them. You know what I mean? They're going to be, you know, Google's going to reward you by being the most relevant result. in their search, right? That's that's why their brand is so strong. On
Well, you
Amazon,
wouldn't want to fool them. You wouldn't want to fool them anyway, because then the reader's getting something that was, they were sold a bill of goods, right? Something that
Exactly.
wasn't. Yeah.
Right. And but so it isn't just by accuracy, it's also by authority, right? So I was just talking to someone the other day about keywords, and he was convinced that you got to get just the right. And I was like, all right, fine, get the right keyword. Okay. So World War II sci-fi cozy romance. So, let's say that you wrote that.
That's all I read. That's all I read, Joel.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah, that's all I read.
But so let's say you get it in there, blah, blah, blah. It's accurate to your book. And your book is searched for in that, right? But let's just assume that there's a decent number of other books that are in that genre as well. So let's say those books have been around longer. They were published by traditional publishers. They have a lot of customer reviews. They have a lot of sales. Who do you think Amazon is going to show in that list of keyword results before you? Those ones, because those are the ones that even if your book is super accurate to the Google search, the Amazon search, that search engine is going to favor the ones that have a proven track record of success, and the key metrics to that are sales and reviews, because then they know customers are buying this and they're reviewing it and they're liking it. So this is what we want to show future customers, right? And so that's why those hacks, that's when I say discoverability has to be earned. That's what I'm talking about, right? It didn't used to be that way. I remember that. I remember way back in the day, I had a really good friend who ran an SEO company. This is like in the early 2000s. And if you just hid code on a web page, you could be number one no matter what on your search results. But you can't do that anymore.
So yeah, I know some folks in the genre like Blaze Ward. Do you know Blaze by chance?
No.
He's a prolific writer up in the Seattle area, and Leah, I think is his wife's name, and she's also an author. She was one of those people who early on the Kindle ebook phase just got picked up by the algorithm, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, right? You're shooting the moon. And nowadays, man, I mean, doing that's not
right.
Not,
it's
not
right.
likely.
And you still occasionally, I talked to someone the other day. She said that happened to her, and that was only a few years ago. She got lucky. She just got lucky. And she's like, and now she's a very successful self-published author, but she's like, look, I just got lucky. I had a good book, but I got lucky.
Yeah, as I used to say as a surgeon, it's better to be lucky than good.
Oh, that's reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm no longer a surgeon. We had other sayings like all bleeding stops, which was also very popular. Anyway, all right.
Taking us to a dark place, Phil.
Oh, wow. We're laughing.
It's very funny.
Seeing everybody laughing.
Joel and Laura, you guys have kind of alluded to some pieces of technology, right? Social media, formerly Google AdWords, all of these things. And, Joel, you just kind of talked about how, as these things evolve, it's almost like whack-a-mole, right? Like you do this one thing that worked previously, and now a new thing pops up.
Yep.
Are there any just, interesting opportunities that you all are seeing technologically nowadays that can help people with marketing?
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing, and some of these things, there's infinite things you can do. There's some of the things we do as a company that we've gotten some good traction with. Doing giveaways is a really effective way to start getting a readership for your books, right? So you can run Kindle price promotions where you drop the price of the ebook down to $0. Some people will just go to 99 cents. I think go to $0 because you're just going to get way better. You're going to get way more people if you go to $0. And then there's all kinds of email lists and stuff you can buy access to, written word media, BookBub. There's different places that you can run those giveaways to. Sometimes they're through standalone email blasts. Sometimes they're through ads. You have to kind of do your research and find out what's there. I mean, we offer a service where we actually go and find those for you, and you just pay us and do all that. But those are things you can cobble together yourselves. That is a really good way to build your reader funnel. So that's one of the more effective techniques. Digital ads, that's tough with books. Everyone, I feel like there's this white whale of profitable Amazon ads that I've never heard anyone ever succeed with on a single book. And there's people out there saying, you know, you can take courses that'll teach you how to do it. And I feel like those authors are making their money on the courses, not their books. We've tried for years. We've used AI. We partnered with a company that was doing AI-based stuff to keep our, you know, human costs down. It's what I found with ads. And honestly, this is the same with other things too, is that it's so much better if you have a series, because that means that you can run those ads or a giveaway like I talked about, and you can lose your money. You can lose money on that first book, right? You can be you can be paying $5 to generate a sale of your book on Amazon. But if you have and you believe in your book and you think they're going to read that first book and keep going, and you've got 3, 4, 5 more books in the series, that's where you're going to make your profit back. So I guess that's more of a tactic and less of a technology.
I like it though.
But that is one of the best ways I've seen authors succeed, is doing that.
Right.
So write more.
Yeah, write more. And, you know, Phil, you and I have talked about this. It's always a bit of a chicken and the egg thing, because it's like, okay, I just got that one book and I want to get it out there, right? It's always better if you can and you want to, in a vacuum, it's better to launch with at least 2 books, because as soon as people have read that first book, they can just read the second book. Now, if you're not ready for that and that's not going to work for you, and it won't work for a lot of people, those people who like your first book, a lot of them are still going to hear about your second book, right? And there's ways to capture them, you know, not just through Amazon. But
well, I keep starting these technology companies and getting sucked into, you know, my own vacuum here. That's a problem. It's a real problem. And who knows? You know, I know Elizabeth Ann West really well, and the folks at Your First Draft and Future Fiction Academy. Maybe they'll just have AI write the second, third, and fourth, and just get that stuff out there. No, I'm not planning to do that. I actually have already started my second and third, but the company, and then I decided I'm going to sell my house, and I'm doing it all at the same time, right? Like, so September 12th is the launch of the book. We're trying to make sure that Spoken just has a really good trajectory. And at the exact same time, I'm going to sell the house.
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, but look, I mean, you know, one thing you can do, and sorry, just going back to that last point. I mean, and you may be already doing this, Phil, I forget. You can, if you already have the next book started, you could basically give the first chapter of the next book away, and you can have a little call to action on the last page. I talked to tons of authors who do this. We've done this with a lot of our authors. On the last page, so people are reading your book, boo, 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 boo. They get to the last page, the end, and then right below it, it goes, get the chapter, get the first chapter of the next book for free with a little QR code, and they go, they have to give your email address, so then they're in your universe. They read that next thing, and then they're excited, and they're yours. They're not Amazon's, they're yours. And that's a really good way to bridge the gap between your first and second.
And so basically, go here, but you sign up. And then if you sign up for like the newsletter, then you get that first chapter.
Exactly. And then you can keep them engaged. And because you can't count on Amazon. I mean, look, Amazon will know that if someone buys your first book, when your second book comes out, they're going to want to show your second book to their customers, but you can't count on them in the way that you can count on yourself. Right.
Yep. Good advice.
Love that. Well, we appreciate both of you and your time. And, you know, what I really have enjoyed about the conversation is just kind of a genuine excitement for authors, for their work. And so, you know, the last question we kind of throw at people is, you know, any parting advice for authors like Phil and Joel? I feel like you just hit us with several gems, right? Just a minute ago. But any parting advice for authors like Phil, or, you know, those who want to follow in his footsteps?
Just don't give up. If it's your dream, do not give up. Trust in yourself, and, you know, get feedback, get help, keep working it, develop your craft, be a better writer, get more readers, be a better writer, get more readers. It's a lifelong journey, and good for you.
But I think get help was probably the best advice of all of that.
I would agree, yeah. I remember I heard there's this, he's an occultist philosopher. His name's Gary Lockman. I think he also used to be like a musician. He's an interesting guy, and I met him through I encountered his work through my previous life as a writer in a spiritual magazine. And he had this quote that said, "There's nothing worse than a bruised romantic." And I think that that's in, like, I think I'm trying to land the plane here on author advice. You want to have belief, like Laura is saying, you want to be optimistic, but you also want to be sober, right? So you can't expect all those, because this industry, you know, and anybody who's watching this is going to have spent plenty of time in this industry, right? Because the minute you type in book launch, you're going to get fed a million algorithm videos from companies
Sure.
that are promising you the moon, and they're going to tell you that it's easy. And it's just not. It's not easy. And, you know, the success rate is small. And it doesn't mean you can't succeed. It doesn't mean it's not worth doing it. But you cannot think that you're somehow going to have this amazing success. And if you do go into it with that, you're going to be a bruised romantic. You're going to give up. So you got to go in there being like, all right, I can do this, but I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to hammer on my craft. I'm going to do all the things, and I'm going to be the captain of my own ship. Right. And I find that the authors that succeed in this have that mentality.
I love how you landed that plane. Thank you both for your time. Thank you, Phil, for bringing us all together. And, you know, I guess Joel and Laura, where can people find you if they're interested in connecting?
Oh, simple. We have a website, LaunchMyBook.com. One thing I would put a plug in for is we publish a lot of content on there. Like, one of our missions as a company is to educate and empower. We really believe, like, we want to teach everybody as much as they possibly can about this business. And then sometimes people work for us, but work with us. So there's a ton of stuff on our blog, YouTube channel. We have a lot of useful advice there, and it's not all just mindset stuff like we've been talking about. There's tactical stuff there too. So I encourage everybody to check that out.
Amazing. So head over to launchmybook.com to keep up with Phil and the rest of his journey. You can follow us at spoken.press. You can follow Phil on his personal socials for the daily check-in that take you through mind and madness as we rocket towards that September 12th launch date. Thanks, everybody.
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.